One of the most difficult experiences in leadership is when you have to say goodbye to a key leader. What happens when our best people leave? When the ministry or departmental leader that we rely on moves on? The void they leave can feel like a wound to the heart of any organization. But what if that departure wasn't a crisis, but a graduation? The ultimate test of a leader is not who they are, but who they raise up. Stay tuned. We're talking about the critical need for leadership development, and it's all right here, right now, and only on the Five Gifts podcast.
You're listening to the Five Gifts podcast, a weekly show designed to equip leaders in the Spirit-filled church. I'm Bruce Ritter, and along with my co-host Charles Russell, we offer insights for leading the local church in the fullest expression of Jesus. If you're interested in learning more about practical theology, the gifts of the Spirit, and spiritual disciplines, this is the show for you. Welcome to the Five Gifts podcast. Welcome everyone to the Five Gifts podcast. I'm your host Bruce Ritter, and as always, I'm joined by my friend and co-host Charles Russell.
Well, hey Bruce, great to be with you. Great to be with all of our subscribers and listeners and viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a great episode lined up about leadership development today.
Yeah, and just greetings to everyone that's able to join us. Again, we're always grateful that you have come by to check us out. And whether you're catching us during the week, maybe on your drive home, or maybe you're catching us on the weekend. I don't know, maybe you're finding some good sermon material late on a Saturday night. Looking forward to Sunday. Anyway, we're glad that you're with us. Charles, I just want to say the Panthers once again have a winning record. And boy, what a win to go into Green Bay and pull off a walk-off field goal.
Man, I'm telling you, there's no better feeling right now. Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina. We're dancing in the streets out here.
And basketball season starts tonight with the Tar Heels. Looking forward to what Hubert's got together for us.
Well, hopefully, Coach Hubert Davis will deliver this year and bring the Tar Heels back into prominence. We've been missing on the national scene for far too long. This is going to be our year. I can just feel it. So.
Well, he needs a big year, believe me.
Yeah, you're right. Well, we could talk about the Tar Heels and the Panthers and everything about Carolina-related sports, but and it'd be a great conversation. It'd be life-giving, exhilarating, everything that you could hope for in a podcast. But we're going to turn and shift our attention again, talking about leadership development today. And so, our mission here on the Five Gifts podcast is simple. We want to give you the tools that you need to not just lead, but to leave a legacy. And today we're tackling a topic that sits at the very heart of that mission. It's the critical work of developing leaders.
That's right, Charles. And this isn't just a nice-to-have skill. We're facing a genuine crisis. It reminds me of a Fortune magazine article that reported on a gathering of world business leaders, and their single biggest worry, and this was not the local church, this was multinational companies, millions, if not billions of dollars annually in income. Their single biggest worry was, where have all the leaders gone? And what our research shows is that the real problem isn't a lack of potential leaders. There really is a failure to develop leaders. So we don't have a leadership crisis. We really have a leadership development crisis.
Exactly. And, that's what we're here to try and begin solving today. So over the next 35, 40, 45 minutes, we're going to give you a complete blueprint. First off, we're going to explore why this is a non-negotiable for any organization that wants a future. Then we'll redefine what a true leader even is, because if you get the foundation wrong, the whole house crumbles. After that, we'll look at the master's blueprint, Jesus' own model for leader development. And then finally, we're going to give you some practical steps to build a culture that doesn't just attract leaders, but actively multiplies those leaders.
Yeah, and hopefully, I think by the end of the episode, you'll have a clear, actionable plan to turn your organization or your church from one that consumes leaders and really burns them up into one that creates them. So let's get started. There really is an urgency when it comes to developing leaders, and I think we've tried to make that clear from the beginning. But before we jump into the practical how-to of developing leaders, Charles, I think we have to establish a strategic urgency. And this isn't just another program to add to your plate. I know you don't need another responsibility. We believe that developing leaders is the core measure of your long-term success, and it really is the only way to secure your organization's future. And we connect it vitally to the apostolic enablement in leadership. And we've said this time and time again, that if the apostolic gift is lacking in the local church, weak leadership will not sense the urgent vision direction from God. In our last episode, we talked so much about vision, and that vision is really connected to a dynamic relationship of encountering God and listening. And so if that apostolic enablement is not present, and the organization lacks vision and direction as a result, is that weak leaders don't recognize, don't equip, don't deploy leaders for service. When the apostolic gift is activated, however, strong leaders begin to execute urgent vision direction, and they begin to align their leadership toward that direction. They place and equip leaders under Christ's authority.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd go so far as to say that, the ultimate test of a leader is not the magnitude of their ministry, but it's whether they train other leaders who can sustain the organization when they're gone. How many stories, how many times have we heard of what we deem to be great and successful ministries crumble when that leader leaves for another assignment or is no longer leading in that capacity. So we're not measuring again by the magnitude of the ministry, but whether or not they can train other leaders to sustain the organization when their presence is no longer there. That's true ministry legacy. It's not the name on the side of a building. Rather, it's the mission continuing long after you've left.
Yeah, that has to be a priority. And you can tell the stakes are incredibly high. So there's a phrase that's always stuck with me, and that is the Great Commission is always one generation from being lost. Now that sounds dramatic, but you have to believe me, that's absolutely true. The only thing standing between our mission and oblivion is the next generation of leaders. So leadership development isn't just an administrative task. It really is the essential work of ensuring that the most important mission in all of history continues.
Yeah, Bruce, and that really requires a radical paradigm shift for most of us. We're trained to think that ministry is about performing tasks. We have to preach the sermon, we have to manage the budget, we got to counsel the hurting, and so. But the truth is, our primary job is not to just do the work. We must build the workers.
Charles, you and I see this all the time, and we see this in the United States with pastors. We see this in our own ministries. We see this overseas. We see that something that's a global reality. What does it look like when a leader is stuck performing tasks instead of building workers?
Well, Bruce, it looks like burnout. It looks like a bottleneck where every decision has to flow through one person. It's like when a brilliant leader who hasn't started working on his or her ministry. What we're talking about is a shift from being a doer to becoming a developer. And truly that shift is everything.
It is. And the biblical model, especially from 2 Timothy 2, verse 2, is about training leaders who will then develop other leaders, impacting, third and fourth generations.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, Bruce, that's legacy. And that kind of legacy is not measured in years, but rather in decades. It's the difference between a flash in the pan and a sustainable movement.
Precisely. So you look at Jesus as an example. He drew massive crowds, but he didn't measure his success by the size of the crowd. He measured it by the competency of his core. He poured his life into a small group of trainees, the original 12. And from there were groups of 70, even 120. But the real payoff, the real indicator of success, wasn't in how many people show up on Sunday, but how many capable godly leaders that you can develop actively at every level of ministry. So if this is our ultimate goal, Charles, we have to start with the right foundation. What exactly is the kind of leader that we're trying to develop?
Well, that's the perfect question because any leadership development process is doomed to fail if it's built on a flawed definition of leadership. Too often, we default to some kind of worldly idea of power or position, even status. But truth is, the biblical model is radically different, and it's critical we get this right. So, one of the best definitions I've found comes from Aubrey Malphurs. He defines a Christian leader as servants with the credibility and capabilities to influence people in a particular context to pursue their God given direction. So, Christian leadership then is simply the process of doing that. Every word in that definition matters. It all begins with being a servant. And this isn't about personality or skill. This is the leader's heart. The ever present temptation for leaders is to suddenly dominate their followers and seek prominence. But Jesus flips this idea on its head. In Matthew chapter 20, he teaches that the essence of leadership is not status, but it is selfless service. He tells us that true leaders are looking for a towel and not a throne.
What a powerful image, and it's so true.
Yeah, man, it is. It truly is. The second key ingredient is what we'd call credibility. And this is the leader's trust. And so this might be the most important part. The first question followers will ask about their leaders is this: do we trust them? If they're not sure, or if their answer is no, they're going to look to someone else for leadership. And that credibility is built on two pillars. The foundation is godly character, who you are when no one's watching. But character alone is not enough. It has to be compared, or it has to be paired with competence. In other words, knowing what to do and having the skills to do it effectively. And without both, without character and competence, trust will begin to erode. And then finally, there we have capabilities. And so this is the leader's toolkit. These are the God given and developed special abilities that allow a leader to be effective. This includes things like spiritual gifts, passions, knowledge, practical skills. It's what gives a leader true kingdom impact. Servant, credible, capable. This is the target that we're aiming for in leadership.
And that's a vital distinction. It's not just about having a good heart. It's about being trustworthy and having the tools to actually get the job done.
That's exactly right. It's a clear picture of a servant leader in mind. There's no better place to look for development blueprint than to the master himself. So, Bruce, help us out. Break down how Jesus did it. Help us understand that.
Yeah, I think blueprint is a good word. It's fascinating because when we study Jesus' ministry, we find timeless and incredible practical patterns for developing leaders. Now, I want to connect this to something because, as a believer, in Christ, what God is doing is bringing us into the full image of Jesus. And so in leadership, it makes sense that not only are we looking like Jesus in our personal lives, but we begin to lead like Jesus in public ministry. So it's his specific practices. There aren't binding commands that we have to replicate in detail, but they are a blueprint. They're a pattern. They're a paradigm. And they offer profound wisdom that we can adapt into a clear four-step process that works in any church, in any ministry, in any organization. So let's walk through them. The first step is recruitment. Jesus was proactive. He doesn't just post an announcement and hope people would show up. That's like what we are prone to do when it comes to getting volunteers, man. Just slap that announcement in the bulletin or on your website. It's not the best way, and that's not something Jesus did. He went out and he found his future leaders. And he used two primary methods. The first was a personal invitation. So it was relationship. You think about his call to the disciples. He says, "Follow me." And then he looks them in the eye and he issues a direct personal challenge. So there's immense power in a one-on-one invitation. And I think that's something we need to consider, is that the leaders that God's to give you are leaders that you're going to have to build a relationship with. So Jesus' second method was prayer. In Matthew 9, before sending out workers, he tells them this principle. He says, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers. So again, just like vision isn't a human contrived thing, recruitment isn't a human resources task. It's a deep spiritual activity that begins on our knees. And we invite the apostolic empowerment of Christ through prayer and fasting. We've talked about that before. We ask him to raise up servant leaders and fill them with the Holy Spirit. And Charles, what I've found is that sometimes demonic spirits can only be cast out by prayer and fasting. We know that. But I honestly believe the anointing for apostolic empowerment also comes through fasting and prayer. So that would be the first step when it comes to recruitment. It takes the personal connection and a leader that's committed to praying for those leaders to be surfaced. Step 2 would be selection. After recruiting a wider group of followers, Jesus was intentional and prayerful in choosing his core leaders. Luke's gospel tells us that he spent an entire night in prayer before he selected the 12. So think about the contrast. The most important personnel decision in history was driven by prayerful deliberation. And that's where we always begin. We always ask the Lord for his eyes to see what he sees in potential leaders. I think our most important decisions are often driven by panicked urgency to fill a spot. I mean, I've felt that pressure before. I dare say I'll feel that pressure again. So there's a profound challenge to how a lot of us operate. The selection, it doesn't just need to be deliberate. It needs to be a spirit process, and we have to lean into prayer. So Charles, those are the first 2 steps. How about giving us the next 2?
Well, I think step 3 sounds like this. Jesus' training methodology was brilliant because it was continuous. He didn't just send his disciples to a 3-day conference and call it good. Matthew 10 said he trained them before sending them out, giving them clear instructions. He also trained them while they were ministering. So, debriefing their experiences, teaching them along the way. Training is not just a one-time event. It's an ongoing process that it combines instruction with hands-on, real-world experience. We really encourage the railroad model. We've done a few episodes on the leadership railroad, and so it might be a good time. You may want to go back and revisit some of those teachings and podcast episodes. Step 4 would be deployment, and so finally, Jesus, he deployed these disciples, and the goal of all of this recruiting, selecting, and training was to get people into ministry. The Great Commission commands us to make disciples, which means moving believers from passive learning to active service and leadership. So deployment is the crucial final step that turns a follower into a leader who can then go and repeat the process with someone else. So again, recruitment, selection, training, deployment. It's simple, but it's very profound and extremely powerful.
It really is, and I think this is a 4-step blueprint that not only is it powerful, but it requires a massive shift in the heart of the senior leader. It really means being willing to empower others, and that can bring up some of our own internal struggles, can't it, Charles?
Yeah, it absolutely can. Honestly, this is this is where the blueprint can oftentimes break down. The biggest obstacle to developing leaders is frequently not a lack of process, but oftentimes the established leader's own heart. So it's time to do a little navel gazing and look into our inner person here and realize that we may be a bigger part of the problem than we want to admit. We can have the best plan in the world, but if we don't deal with our own internal barriers, look, we're going to sabotage our own efforts. So, 2 of the biggest things that we can talk about are number 1, the fear of giving up control, and then secondly, the unaddressed dark side of our own leadership. So let's talk about let's tackle this challenge of empowerment. We define empowerment as the intentional transfer of authority from an established leader who maintains responsibility.
That sounds great in theory, but that's the part that terrifies most leaders. Why is giving up that control so hard?
Well, it's terrifying because it means embracing uncertainty with faith. A leader has to shift their mindset from ownership of the ministry to stewardship. Man, I'm telling you, that's huge. Shifting from ownership of the ministry to stewardship. Look, pastor, leader, this is not our church. This is God's church. These are His people. We're at best we're stewards. Uh, Church belongs to Him, and so that's a fundamental shift that has to take place to make these kind of transforming moves in our leadership. It's not my ministry; it's God's, and I'm stewarding it for a season. This requires a ton of patience to make that kind of a leap. But there's a great story about two lumberjacks who are competing to chop the most wood. One lumberjack, he works tirelessly all day long. The other guy, he stops every hour for 10 minutes. And at the end of the day, the one who took breaks had chopped far more wood than the one who had not. The other guy, he was baffled. He was kind of perplexed. He looks at the guy who was taking the breaks, and he says, "Look, when I stopped chopping," he said, what I was doing was sharpening my axe." And that gives us a good parallel here in leadership development. Developing leaders is sharpening the axe.
Mm.
It's working on the ministry. It's not just in it. It's always slower in the short run, but it's exponentially more attractive in the long run. And so, this requires humility to starve your ego. You have to give away the very authority that previously formed the basis for your own sense of personal success. Man, I'm stepping on toes here. I think they're mine, not anybody else's. This is a
No,
huge shift that we have to make, though.
you're not just stepping on your toes, Charles. I know you're stepping on mine, and I'm pretty sure you're stepping on a lot of listeners. That's a deep character issue, and it affects all of us, which I think leads us right into your second point about the dark side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a concept from Gary McIntosh and Sam Remo. The dark side refers to those unaddressed parts of our own hearts, our insecurities, our need for approval, a compulsive drive to succeed. Here's the paradox: these are often the very drives that compel people to become successful in the first place. But if it's left unaddressed, they can become the very things that precipitate our failure. Why is that? If it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's working, why change? Well, it's because a leader that's driven by a deep need for approval can't handle seeing someone else get the credit. A compulsive leader with a need for absolute control, they can't truly empower anyone. A paranoid leader who is suspicious of other gifted people will see every emerging leader as a threat, not a blessing. And so these kind of internal drives prevent us from developing others because we can't share the limelight or even give away control. And so, in facing these internal battles, it's the hardest work that a leader will ever do. But once we commit to that journey, we can begin building an external culture that makes leadership development now the new normal.
Well, I think that's a perfect transition because developing a few individual leaders is good, but creating a self sustaining leadership culture, really a leadership greenhouse, is the ultimate goal. We're moving from building a house for leadership to creating a home where leaders naturally grow. So, here are a few architectural tools for building that kind of a culture. I think first, you have to adopt what we might call an empowering church model. Regardless of your model of ministry, if it doesn't include the capacity to teach others, to equip others, You might think of it like a teaching hospital. A teaching hospital doesn't just treat patients, it's the core purpose to train doctors. So, in the same way, a training church doesn't just do ministry, it exists to train people who do ministry. And this is a mindset that permeates everything that the empowering church does. Secondly, I think you have to identify and define the leadership levels in your organization. I mean, what does it look like in your church to be a volunteer or a small group leader? What does it mean to be a team lead or a staff member? When you define these levels, you create a clear pathway for growth. And you also set up levels where people can either aspire to a new level of growth, or you also are able to define maybe the leadership structure of your church. That's very important. Thirdly, I think it's important to use diverse training venues. Development just doesn't happen in a classroom. Remember that when we talk about training leaders, we're talking about training them in the process of doing actual ministry. So the source of training can come through apprenticing, and we believe in a classic master apprentice model in every level of ministry that provides high impact, hands-on learning that's also accountable in the right context for ministry. Of course, we also believe in coaching and mentoring, where that one-on-one relationship that's focused on targeted growth. The coach works not by providing answers, but by asking questions and helping people discover what they couldn't discover on their own. We think that reflection is really important. As someone is learning new concepts and engaging in ministry, that coach or mentor is an actual bridge of dynamic reflection and enables them to learn and to assimilate that information. And then another venue that I encourage is what we might call huddles. These are simply small groups of leaders with similar responsibilities, and they're meeting regularly. They're encouraging one another. They're sharing problems and sharing their learning, and they're solving those problems and assimilating that learning.
Yeah, well, man, those are some great practical suggestions for us, and people learn in so many different ways. So, Bruce, I think the variety that you're giving us is really a key factor in helping us to be successful in our leadership development for sure.
Yeah, and I would say the final, maybe the most important element is the senior leader has to learn to tell the stories that begin to highlight, God's faithfulness, the things that God has done. I think a testimony culture, and Charles, as Pentecostals, that's such a rich element in our tradition. We don't have liturgies; we have testimonies, and I think that's important. To create a culture, you have to become a storyteller. You have to be able to rehearse what God has done. We have to help people relate to what God is doing, and they share what God has promised to do. That's what a leader does. As we shared last time about vision being rooted in the promise of God, boy, just the thread of God's promise and His faithfulness, that kind of creates a folklore, if you will, a history of God's activity that really reinforces our values and inspires the next generation to believe that God can and will use them too. So I think building a culture like this is the work of the lifetime leader, but really it's a legacy that you're leaving that's going to echo into eternity. So Charles, why don't you bring this all home for us?
All right, well, we'll try to tie it all together here. What a powerful conversation we're having here. So let's kind of quickly summarize some of the key takeaways from today's blueprint, if you will. If you remember nothing else, remember these 5 things. Number 1, the urgency of the task. Your legacy is not defined by what you build, but by the leaders you develop to carry the mission forward. Second is the heart of a leader. It all starts with the right foundation. So aim to be a servant with credibility and capability. Third takeaway is this: the master's blueprint. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Follow Jesus' proven 4-step model of recruiting, selecting, training, and deploying leaders. Number 4 is the inner work. So the biggest barrier is often you or me individually as the leader. So we've got to be willing to empower others and courageously confront our own dark side. And finally is the lasting goal. Don't just build a program, build a culture, build a leadership greenhouse that multiplies leaders for the next generation.
Charles, that's a concise, fantastic summary of today's episode. But I'd like for everyone that's listening to us, we don't just want this to be information for you. We want a potential transforming moment for you. So we have a challenge for you. And the first step is always personal reflection. We challenge you to go to the comment section on our YouTube channel and answer a couple of questions. One is of those 5 steps, which is something that you need to give consideration to today? What is one practical step that you can take this week to begin developing a leader around you? We would really love to read your comments. And if this episode has been valuable to you, the best way you can support the show is to like it, to share it with another leader, and subscribe. By all means, subscribe to the 5 Gifts podcast wherever you listen to. It helps us reach more leaders just like you. And if there's something you didn't like and you really hated the episode, well, go ahead and hit that like button twice, or that downvote button, hit that twice rather.
Smash it twice. Hey, and we want to hear your testimonies. We want to create a culture of testimonies here. So somebody cue the tambourine music and just let them start rolling in. We want to hear your testimonies. Look, hey, if you're a leader who knows it's time to move from theory to action, to build a leadership pipeline in your own organization, but you're not sure where to start, we want to personally invite you to take the next step. Bruce and I, we offer dedicated leadership coaching to help you design and implement a process that fits your unique context. So the best thing to do is reach out for leadership coaching. We help leaders discern God's voice and lead without striving. So you can reach me at charlesrussellministries.com and charlesrusselltraining.com. You can reach Bruce at coachingcardia.com. And again, we would be honored to walk this journey with you. So leaders, go lead well and go multiply. And we'll see you next week right here on the 5 Gifts podcast.
You've been listening to the 5 Gifts podcast. If you would like to take the next step as a spiritual leader, we invite you to visit either of our websites or contact us for leadership coaching. We can help you reach the next level in your own growth and leadership. We provide leadership, spiritual gift, and personality assessments that give you a better grasp of your leadership style. And we also create a customized growth plan that empowers you to reach your full kingdom potential. We can't wait to hear from you.